Welcome to the Principal's Log.
This evening, we embark on an extraordinary journey.
A journey of self-discovery and lifelong learning.
Come with us as we explore new horizons in a safe, comfortable space where administrators can collaborate, share ideas, and get the support of their peers.
Gain insight and access information on policies and procedures that guide our mission.
Learn best practices and understand the strength of being part of a professional learning community.
Be informed, be empowered, be prepared to face any challenge as we chart a way forward in this rapidly evolving, digitally enhanced educational landscape.
Be a part of the journey.
A very special good night to each and every one of you. To all administrators gathered here tonight, we thank you for gracing us with your presence. For without you, there is no us. And the us that I refer to, of course, is APS. Tonight, we are about to launch into the stratosphere with our Principal's Log, a series of learned discussions where the topic will be the educational landscape of our beautiful Twin Island nation. My name is David Simon, but I'm not alone. I share the virtual stage with the stunning, serene, and smooth-talking Cindy Ramnarayan. Cindy, come in, Cindy. Come in, Cindy. Cindy?
Hello, everybody. Good evening. David, I'm here. And it is my pleasure to be here. Good evening, esteemed principals from across our nation. Welcome aboard our maiden voyage of the Principal's Log. This is our very own Starship Enterprise, as you can tell from our background. We are boldly venturing into the vast universe of educational leadership this evening. So we are here we embark on a journey inspired by the legendary explorers of Star Trek, and that's our theme. Charting new territories, seeking out new insights, and forging connections that transcend space and time this evening.
Cindy, what does the Principal's Log do? What exactly is your interpretation of the Principal's Log?
Right. So, David, this evening, we're hoping that the Principal's Log is really a mission that we are carrying out to join our forces, to reflect, to learn, and to grow together as principals. You know, with our theme of the Star Trek theme and so on, we form a whole crew, I feel, and we bound together with a common mission to support one another and expand our knowledge and to boldly lead where, you know, no principal has led before, to empower us all and that we grow into the great educational leaders that we have that potential to be.
Oh, very well said, Cindy. It's almost as if with each day we are going into unknown territory.
Indeed.
Having said that, I would leave that task of introducing our president to you, Cindy. Can you introduce the president of APS?
Right. And so tonight, you know, as we set our course for tonight's adventure, I want to invite all of us to engage our warp drives of curiosity, to embrace the unknown with open minds and open hearts, and let us journey together, uniting in our quest this evening to bring out the best in ourselves and our fellow principals. And so it is indeed my pleasure and privilege to introduce the captain of our ship, Mrs. Charlene Hicks Rayburn, esteemed principal of Barataria South Secondary School and the president of the Association of Principals of Public Secondary Schools of Trinidad and Tobago. Charlene will be bringing us greetings and sharing pertinent information. So take it away, Charlene.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And good evening, colleagues in education. Good evening, administrators who have joined us, both past as well as present administrators. And for the executive of APS, we are thrilled to be here this evening on this maiden voyage. This series of Principals Log has been long in coming. We have been planning these sessions for quite some time. And we are thrilled that we have finally made that bold step. And we know that usually the first step is the hardest, but we understand and we anticipate that our Principals Log will grow from strength to strength with your support, with the support of our membership and our hardworking APS executive. As Cindy and David have indicated to us, the primary objective of the Principals Log is to, in fact, build our professional learning community, as well as to build our digital footprint. But it is also, I believe, it is important for us as educators to build that connection outside of the long, treacherous, hard hours that we all know you experience on a day-to-day basis. And some will say, well, I don't think I have the energy. But I want to assure you that joining in this community at this time, when we are complete at the end of this session, you are going to be more energized. You are going to be more empowered to face some of the challenges that we face on a daily basis. So please be not afraid. Throughout this platform as well, one of the things that we want to embark on in this series, we want to promote the importance of the Caribbean Association of Principals of Public Secondary Schools, CAPS, which can be considered the regional body of which all the respective associations are a part. And it is this association, the CAPS regional body, which is responsible for our biennial conferences of principals. And we are hoping that through this initiative, through this venture, what we will have will be the participants from this will in fact form part of the contingent of our 2025 CAPS conference, which is scheduled to be held in Grenada, July 21st to 26th. We look forward to carrying a large contingent because Trinidad and Tobago, we usually come out, we represent, and those conferences, every principal needs to experience a CAPS conference. So we look forward. This initiative will help for us to form bonds, for us to connect on a greater level, and eventually, lead to that contingent that we are looking forward to having and to representing us at Grenada 2025. And the theme for the conference has already been selected, and that is empowering educational leaders, navigating challenges, inspiring excellence. Throughout the series, we want to highlight past conferences. You're going to get information, as you will from starting with our maiden voyage. We are going to show some clips and entice you and see what the information, the wealth of information and discussion that occurs at these conferences that leave us so revitalized to come back to our territories and to impart that knowledge in our respective schools. Principals, we all know the importance of the log and what the log represents to us. And I'm sure there are some stories that individuals can give of the great logbook. When we conceptualized of the principal's log, it was the intention for us as well as reflective practitioners. We saw the importance of the symbol of the log and giving or devoting a particular some time within the episode, within the session, for each of us to engage in reflection, as well as to make an entry into the log. So towards the end of the session, guided by our moderators, you will be informed as to when you will make an e-log entry. After we have been enriched by the discussion, we want you to share, we want you to reflect on how you have benefited from what you have learned from each of these sessions that we are going to be sharing with you. So with that said, I just would like to as well end by stating we have to say thank you to RSC, our technical support, Restore a Sense of ITCAN, through which their efforts, this has been made possible. And we look forward to a rich discourse and a really edifying and energizing session. To that note, I say thank you and enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Captain. That, of course, was our President of APS, Charlene Hicks Rayburn. So let's delve right into our main segment. Tonight, we want to pay tribute to a man, Dr. Bernard Tappin, an individual who gave his life, really, in terms of what he was able to do to ensure that he could play his part in helping to build the education system in Trinidad and Tobago. If you don't know him, you are going to find out about him tonight. Tonight, we are going to have two individuals who knew him very intimately, worked with him very closely, and they are going to be here with us to share some of their insights. Certainly, it is as a result of the work of people like Dr. Bernard Tappin that we are able to build as we strive to improve the educational experience that we offer to our students in Trinidad and Tobago. I want to ask my co-host, Sydney Ramnarine, to introduce the very first individual that we will call upon to give us some information about the very revered Dr. Bernard Tappin. Cindy?
Thank you, David. I think we'll do a little video clip just before we get into our first presenter.
Well, I have been in education all my life. I was president of the Association of Principals of Public Secondary Schools in Trinidad. According to my data here, from 2003 to 2006, and I was president of APS from 2005 to 2003 to 2005. And I was the chairman of the committee that organized the last conference we held in Trinidad. That is some years ago. But I've been involved in CAPS and I've been giving help to our association over the years and providing to give all support I can. But CAPS is a very, very important institution, and finding out that CAPS caused CXC.
All right, so that would lead us down to that discussion.
Is a product of UE in Jamaica, and CAPS has a role in CARICOM.
Right, so
I think with a new secretariat emerging, and I think with technology, I feel we can move forward. That is an issue in the past, and I totally agree with Faye. I remember Bidicus Jules' tremendous opening speech at Jamaica. He was the CXC registrar, and he was excellent. So therefore, you leave there with a lot of excellent suggestions. And then, you know, sometimes somebody has to do some implementing. And I don't know if the territorial associations get the data and do some pushing, because, as Ver was saying, certainly we have not a clear mandate, but it's clearly we are to guide policy and push forward education in the region. That's what we have been doing. We must possibly push a little more. But we're so concerned about our own schools and the problems that we face that, all right, that's secondary, but we have to push forward. And thank God we're meeting as a conference, so CAPS will not die. And I'm thrilled. So we have to move forward.
Okay, so we are back. We heard from the man. And as I said, we are going to have a number of discussions led by two individuals who knew him very intimately. So we will have Cindy do an introduction of the first person who's going to give us an insight, the man, Dr. Bernard Tapin. Cindy?
Thank you, David. And this evening, our very first presenter is Mrs. Angela Ailou. Mrs. Ailou is the past principal of Holy Faith Convent in Couva, and she also served as a school supervisor 3 in our country, in our nation. And so Miss Ailou would have had that experience, that opportunity to work closely with Dr. Tapin. And certainly this evening, we're looking forward to her sharing her experience and her memories of this man who seemed larger than life himself and has left a legacy behind. So Mrs. Ailou, thank you for being here. Welcome. And we look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. And the little clip did justice in exposing to the association the knowledge that Dr. Tapin had about APS and CAPS and his need to convince us that we have a role as principals, not only in our schools in Trinidad, but in the Caribbean as well. So that was quite an interesting clip. So to get into the talk, this evening, I want to talk about Bernard from 2 lenses. One as my dear friend, and the other as the consummate professional we all know him to be, as was demonstrated in the clip. For those of you who don't know him, you will notice that there is an uncanny likeness to Colonel Sanders from KFC, and people and children delighted in identifying with that aspect of it. And of course, Bernard loved the attention. Bernard was the best friend ever. He was always kind, cheerful, and accommodating. No matter how many times I would take the water taxi to Port of Spain and ask Bernard to collect me, he was there waiting. Not only did he collect me, but he was gracious enough to take me around to do my chores, as well as take me for breakfast or lunch before dropping me back to the terminal. Bernard was the friend who was always willing to accompany you to an event that no one else wanted to attend. You just need to tell him time and place, and he will be there. I remember a time we were all going to Tobago and we realized that we had extra space. I called around this, trying to encourage people to go, oh, everybody going. Who going? Oh gosh, I can't go, this and the other. I called Bernard. Bernard's response was, what time to meet you at the airport? As simple as that, no stress. And that is the kind of stressless person Bernard was. Of course, in those days, you could get a ticket to Tobago easily, not like today. Of course, when you went out with Bernard, it was a different story, because any group in, Bernard knew every single student that he ever taught. Bernard knew the name of the student or the teacher or the principal or whoever it was. He knew their name. He remembered incidents about them. And after the person left, he could tell you all about the person. Bernard was a storehouse of knowledge. Bernard walked around the savannah in the morning. Every morning, he said he was walking around the savannah. If you really knew, it was really talking around the savannah, because every few steps he made, somebody was hailing him out, and he had to stop to say a good word to each person. That is the person Bernard was. After we retired, Bernard became even more involved. He would call you twice for the day, or at least once for the day. Once if he wanted to find out how you're going, you're making sure you're all right. But twice if something was happening in the world or in Trinidad that he felt needed to be discussed. So he would call you, oh, you see what's going on? And of course, he always had an opinion about each and every incident that was taking place, whether it's locally or internationally. So Bernard, to me, was truly a remarkable person and my really good friend. As a professional, which most people here would know, well, most of your present principals may not have known Bernard personally, but as a professional, I first met Bernard at History Teachers Association because we were both history teachers. At one stage, he was president of the History Teachers Association, and he was also one of the people who started the English Teachers Association. So notice his commitment to education. As a principal, with his sense of commitment and love of education, it was natural for him to join APS and APAS. In APS, that is my, it shouldn't go off before. Yeah, it's saying low battery. Yeah, so he joined APS and APAS, and he moved from being a member of the executive to president when he was thrown into it, actually, because the president at the time was Mrs. Crepin, and she got sick, and Bernard had to take over. During his, of course, then afterwards, you know, after elections and whatever, he became the president. And I think he served 2 terms. He only gave up when he became an SS3. During his tenure, he initiated and supported the compilation of the education circulars into the 2 books. This took a lot of time and effort from the team and has been one of the most successful projects of APS. Financially, it was quite successful. Even up to when I retired, I know that we sold, deans and heads were always coming, principals, vice principals were always purchasing books. As president, he was also responsible for organizing a CAPS conference, which in my opinion raised the bar for conference in the region. It was the first all-inclusive conference, and by that I mean, and I put in this because I want the present members to understand the history of APS as well. At first, when the other conferences, you would just pay for the conference, and then you had to pay separate for hotel and separate for meals and all of that. What we did at that time, that was the first conference, we did all-inclusive. So they paid one fee, which at that time I think was $1,000 US or something, and they got everything included, so they didn't have to worry about. And included in that was a trip to Tobago, the hotel, food, tours, and everything. So, and also for the first time, we initiated selling T-shirts and photos and CDs and we were able for APS to build a good financial foundation for the association. Excuse me. Of course, organizing the conference was demanding, but I didn't face Bernard at all. Mr. Bernard, or Dr. Bernard, was running the president's house to get the president to attend Caribbean Airlines to book Tobago tickets for everybody, trying to get Mrs. Manning to organize a reception for the delegates. Of course, he had help, but he really pushed and was able to motivate the association to produce an excellent conference. As president, he represented the association at various committees and was Trinidad and Tobago representative at CXC for many years. I can go on and on about his contribution to APS because there's a lot more that can be said, but I think the picture I'm trying to paint, you should be understanding the person, the kind of person Bernard was. Even after he moved on to becoming an SS3, he still took an interest in APS and attended many meetings and CAPS conferences. After his role as principal was over, he moved on, becoming a school supervisor 3. Once again, he made his mark as an educator, always contributing to ensure that the education system benefited from his knowledge of the system, always insisting that those in head office did not know what was happening on the ground, and it was his role to guide and educate them, ensuring the schools and principals benefited. After retirement, one would think Bernard had just started another career because everybody lined up for his knowledge and experience. So he shared his knowledge and his experience widely. He had interaction with the Public Service Commission, Teaching Service Commission, the Catholic Board of Education, the seminary at Mount St. Benedict, the University of the West Indies. He did some work with the Ministry of Education with the digitalization of the circulars. He did work for CRADI, APS, and any school or organization that requested his help. And just remember, most of these things were voluntary. And these are only the ones I remember. So in closing, I just want to say Bernard was a person who lived life to the fullest. He loved the family and friends. He was always kind, caring, and cheerful. A professional who served as an exemplar to fellow principals and students. And Gary, I think, will pick up his involvement with students. He was very knowledgeable about history, whether it's church history, Trinidad history, world history, and education. He was a leader in every sense of the word. How did Bernard do it? He was a person who believed in his God and was dedicated to his country and to its people. Rest in peace, Bernard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that great insight into the individual that was Dr. Bernard Tappin. Cindy, it was really, really eye-opening to see that one man could do so many different things.
I think, you know, I never had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Tappin. I only heard about him. And, you know, tonight, from what I've heard so far, it's cemented in my mind that this was really a remarkable man who's left a great legacy behind for us as principals to follow, you know. And I'm excited to hear from Mr. Ribeiro as well. So,
yes, so it gives me great pleasure to, from one great man to another. I must say this is the first time I'm going to be referring to him as Mr. A very close friend of mine that I usually very affectionately call Gary. But tonight, Mr. Gary Ribeiro, entered the teaching profession in 1990 at St. Mary's College in Port of Spain as a teacher of English language and literature, geography, and history. He became a Dean of Discipline there in 1997 and was promoted to Vice Principal at St. Anthony's College in 2001. In 2005, he was promoted to Principal of Belmont Boys Secondary, now St. Francis College in Port of Spain. In 2008, he became a commissioned officer at the rank of captain in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force Reserves, and later that year was seconded to full-time military service in the Ministry of National Security as the program coordinator of the military-led Academic Training Academy at Mausika. In 2010, Mr. Ribeiro returned to academic administration as principal at Presentation College in Chaguanas, where he spent 9 years until transferring to Holy Cross College in Arima in 2019. Without any further delay, let's welcome to the virtual microphone Mr. Gary Ribeiro. Gary, all yours.
Pleasant good evening to our president and all the presenters. Special good evening to Sayo, my good friend. My role here is to give a little insight into the man, the great man, Bernard Tappin, from the perspective of educator, teacher, and a great human being when he interfaces with his students. I'm also going to touch on 2 or 3 very important learnings from his life that would have impacted my journey through education administration and that I'm hoping would impact your learnings as well. So Bernard Tappin, first thing about him, he was an Eastman. He grew up in St. Augustine and went to school in what you would have called the Abbey School up on Mount St. Benedict. In 1975, while walking through the grounds of Holy Cross College, he met Father Foley and was immediately hired. He started school apparently the following week. So from 1975, Bernard taught history, language and literature. He was also a dean at Holy Cross College. In 1991, he went across to Fatima College as vice principal. And in 2000, he returned to Holy Cross College as principal, where he spent 6 years before being promoted to school supervisor. He retired in, I believe, 2010 or thereabouts, but he never stopped with his interaction, as Angela mentioned, with the ministry and the Catholic Board, CREDI, and a host of other organizations. So I'm going to run through some of the things that Bernard was involved in: lecturing in CREDI, a member of the Catholic Education Board of Management, Public Service Commissioner, Association of Boards of Management. He represented the Catholic Board at that level. He was an advisor in the Ministry of Education and worked behind the scenes and on contract for them on several different projects. So the first learning that I wanted to talk about is Bernard's just kaleidoscopic presence in every part of the educational community. Now, Bernard was not a married man, he had no children, so he would have had probably a little extra time to involve himself in so many different things. So when I met him professionally, because I used to see him as a big man when I was a young fellow, he was a big man in St. Augustine, St. Joseph. I was sent there as a vice principal to seek advice from him, because as most of you who are vice principals would know that the learning curve is steep from being a dean to a vice principal. I was having some degree of trouble. And Bernard's first words to me were, young man, I hear you're giving trouble down in St. Anthony's. Come and let's talk. And from then, everywhere I turn, you'll see Bernard Tappin. When I was installed as principal in Belmont, he was there on behalf of the board to install me. I was installed principal of presentation, he was also there. When I went to the CAPS conference in Jamaica, Angela decided to put me and Bernard up as roommates in the hotel room for a week, which was another experience. Every single conference, every single interview that I had to do on behalf of the board and what have you, there was Bernard And it all culminated in me going back to his old school, Holy Cross College. And Bernard was on the board of management of that same school as a senior member. So everywhere you turn, I want to back up what Angela was saying. Bernard knew everybody. He was all over the place. And he had a special love. This is my second learning from Bernard, a very special love for his students, both at Holy Cross College and at Fatima College. He would tell you anecdotes, rich anecdotes, full of history about anybody he would meet. And the boys really and truly adored him. Hundreds of condolences came when people learned that he had passed away. And everybody had a story about Bernard as a teacher, as a dean, as a principal. But I believe as a teacher, that's where he made a lot of impact in the classroom, teaching English language and literature to boys who, may not have been all that eager to learn literature. He had several different techniques, and one of the techniques he would use was very intense, self-depreciating humor. Bernard delighted in his resemblance to Colonel Sanders, and he would laugh and carry on when the boys call him that. So the third learning I want to, because I know you're pressed for time, would be Bernard's total ability to just let out information to anybody who wanted to ask. He was always there to answer any question at any time. He was never rushed. He would always find time to impart all of his knowledge that he learned as a teacher, as a dean, as a principal, as a commissioner, as a school supervisor, to anybody who would ask. He was a consummate people person, and he never wore the hat of doctor. I don't think I ever called him doctor, ever. And he never used to correct people or insist that they call him Dr. Bernard Tappin. He was always Bernard to us, Mr. Tappin to his students, Colonel Sanders to those who knew him and weren't afraid to call him that in public. A very, very nice man. And he's going to be severely missed, not just in Catholic education, but in education on the whole. So that's my contribution to the memory of Bernard Tappin. And I hope that what I learned from him over the 20 years that I was a principal, that the little insight that we are allowed to give tonight would edify a few of the younger principals and cause them to ask a few more questions as to how he did what he did and why he did what he did as a leading educator in Trinidad. Thanks, Ayo.
Thank you very much, Gary. We want to get into a general discussion now. Cindy, are you there?
Yes. Thanks, David. Just listening into Mr. Ribeiro, Ms. Ailu, about who was Mr. Tappin, Dr. Tappin, and as Gary said, he was such a personable person and very sharp and a storehouse of knowledge, some of these descriptions. And I feel like, I have missed out in not knowing this person. And we would like to open up the floor now to our guests who are here on the program to share your thoughts and your experiences with Dr. Tappin as well, so that, we can all gain even further insight into who was this great man, Dr. Tappin. So we really would like to hear from all of our attendees tonight.
Well, what we can also ask individuals to do as well, especially if individuals are aware, you would have heard some of the things that Dr. Tappin would have worked so assiduously at to ensure that we are able to build as a professional learning community. What we can have individuals do as well is, on some of the things that you will have worked on, if you can share with us how and why those things are so important to you as you carry out your day-to-day operations as a principal or vice principal. The floor is now open for anyone who would like to contribute.
So please share, raise your hands, your virtual hands, and we would really love to turn over to you because we're looking forward to listening and learning.
So perhaps what I can certainly do is start. I didn't get the opportunity to work very closely with Dr. Tapin, but I met him as a dean and as a vice principal. I met him when he came to do a number of training sessions. And I remember, I'm now hearing, you see, this is why it is so important for us to do things like this, because I'm now hearing about his love and interest in history. Because I found out that he had a burning passion for documentation. He spoke about the fact that the Ministry of Education did not have so many things easily documented for the younger administrators who were coming into office to be able to learn. And I remember that his driving passion was to get those books of circular of memorandum digitalized so that they would be readily available. So I would say that he certainly was a man that operated way before his time. And I was really, really enthused by his energy. He seemed to be a very high energy individual whenever you came into contact with him. As a matter of fact, I found out later on that he was ill during some of the times that he engaged with us, but you would never be able to know that from the way in which the man operated. So that is just my take, Cindy, of knowing him for just a few short years towards the end of his career. So don't be shy. Give us your insight, whatever it may be, if you knew the man, so that we can all learn in terms of the foundation that we are attempting to build to move forward. The floor is open. Now it's not.
It would be good to hear, you know, even if persons may not have a memory that they would like to share, maybe the insights, even from listening this evening, what are the things that you feel has impacted you and might direct your path from here, you know, or give you an idea of what you would like to do differently or continue to do in principalship, in your principalship?
Good night, everyone. I don't know if Cindy, you could hear me.
We hear you loud and clear. On the bridge, we hear you.
Okay, I'm tuning in on my phone, so I just want to make sure that everybody could hear. Good night to the moderators and to everyone on this platform. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my experiences with Dr. Tapin. I first met him when I was a principal at in Caroni district, and he was a supervisor there. And from the very beginning of my interactions with him, he revealed himself to be someone who was genuinely interested in the welfare of principals and vice principals and educational administrators, and was always willing to share his encyclopedic knowledge of the system in a very humble manner. You know, he wore his wisdom and experience very lightly, very approachable as a SS3. He was not someone who sought to intimidate anybody, but genuinely reached out a hand to help, to advise when you asked for the advice. And I always appreciated his love for history. It was a passion of his, and whenever he spoke, you know, you could tell that he had this grounding in history. He had a wonderful sense of humor. And as Gary said, he could really laugh at himself, because Gary shared about the Colonel Sanders and so on. And he had this youthfulness about him that belied his age. And every time I interacted with him, I felt, energized, and I felt motivated to continue to be passionate about what I did as an administrator, because clearly he was one of those individuals. He also really represented the interests of educational administrators and students in an unflinching manner. He would approach the Ministry of Education, write letters, make representation in a very well-informed manner. And he was someone, I think, that you couldn't really contradict, because he operated from such a well-informed sort of basis. As president of APAS, I had invited him several times to do presentations for us, and he was always very enthusiastic, very willing to give of his time and his energy, and very patient with all the questions. And, we always come away from our interactions with him with renewed knowledge and with an admiration for, the wealth of information that he imparted. And aside from that, on a personal level, whenever he used to visit, I'm at Lakshmi Girls, and the Mahasabha headquarters is there, and he was a member of the board of boards whenever they had their meetings. And every time he came to those meetings, he will always pop into the office and ask me how things are going, everything is all right, and ask questions about, how things are progressing with the various associations, and genuinely interested in our welfare and what was happening in the education system. And such a warm smile and a lovely laugh that when he walked through the office, it was like this electrical wave that came into the office. Everybody just gravitated towards him. The last time I spoke with him, he was babysitting, I think, his grandniece, and I think it was a nephew as well. And he was telling me about his young children, and they're keeping him so, alert and occupied. And he seemed to be so family oriented as well. An all-round gentleman, somebody who contributed immensely to the education system. I think to all of us, in terms of our knowledge and how we operate, the Book of Circulars alone is testimony of that dedication and passion. And his legacy will certainly live on for many, many years, because he has helped to build this education system into a more professional level, and also to support us as administrators over the many years. So that is just some of my sharing about Dr. Tapin. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sonia. That's adds to, the legacy of the man. So again, the floor is open. While individuals, I guess, gather the strength, let me be the devil's advocate in the room, Cindy. So recently there was an incident. Yes, it was in a primary school where I don't know how many individuals are aware, but a student had brought some stuff to sell, and it resulted in some students going to the hospital. And the principal of the school used the forum of the WhatsApp media to, of course, inform her parents and that sort of thing. That is a controversial issue, how we use WhatsApp as principals all know. Gary, I want to engage you. How do you think Dr. Tapin would have reacted to something like this? Let's say he was that principal's school supervisor. How would he have reacted to something like that? What would he have done? What would he have suggested, knowing the man?
What advice would he give? Yes.
Gary?
No, your microphone is off, Gary. Turn it on.
Okay, you hearing me now?
Yes, we are.
I'm just not too clear as to what the principal wrote on WhatsApp.
Well, it's not so much what the principal wrote. The principal used the WhatsApp medium to inform her parents, etc., about what had happened. And of course, you know that some of that information then was leaked. So then there is she is picking up some flack because that was the way in which she chose to inform her parents. How do you think he would have approached a principal like that? What do you think he would have said?
Well, he would never have castigated the principal. He would have probably had a great degree of sympathy and he would want to prove to the ministry and any naysayers that the principal had the best intent to get across the message. Privately, he would have sat with the principal and probably said it may have been the best thing to use the telephone, which is a more closed form of communication, because the propensity of WhatsApp to be you could screenshot, you could, you know, it's once you write a communication by WhatsApp or email, whatever you write becomes almost indelible outside there. So the best form of communication is direct contact by phone, using the records of the school. Email, of course, is going to be much too slow. But I suppose the principal might have been a younger principal, and WhatsApp may have been the most popular form of communication at the time. Decided to use it. To me, once the intent was heartfelt and once the information transmitted was not scandalous or emotional, then I don't think that the principal could be castigated for using that form of communication. But Bernard certainly would not have made that principal feel as if it were the end of the world, or would not have added to the criticism at all. Okay, he would have soothed the situation using very kind words, and in the end probably spoken to the principal privately using his experience to let him or her know that, you know, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gary. And Angela, you want to just throw in a 30 seconds here as well and say from the man that you know what you think he would have done in this given situation?
Well, I would agree with Gary totally that what would be most important to Bernard would be the well-being of the principal. You know, to ensure that the principal felt support was coming from, whether it's a ministry, if he was doing it as a SS3, you know, that the person is being supported and he would guide you appropriately from his knowledge and experience. And of course, we have to remember he was very knowledgeable about education policies, you know. He was very knowledgeable and would use that knowledge to guide the person appropriately.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela. Well, I know it is not usual, Cindy, that we have principals who are shy. I know principals are usually very, very outspoken and outspoken. Yeah. So, nonetheless, what it does indicate, though, I think that that many individuals may not have known the man, especially from this particular audience. So people are just soaking in and understanding who he was.
I think so. And, yes. You know, therefore, having soaked in all these, and I'm glad that persons are here to listen in and learn about him. We called our program the Principal's Log. And so we want to create a log here this evening as well. And so we're inviting all of our participants here with us this evening to go to the chat, to the Zoom chat, and to write your comments at this point in time. You know, share what you may not have verbalized this evening, so that we keep a record of our presence at the show this evening, and not just our presence, but the reflections, the learnings, what you will take away. Perhaps you might want to share something new that you will do, or a new approach that you might take. I think, David, that was a really good question to bring up about what would Bernard do, in circumstances, and perhaps from what we learned this evening that, we may even think that when we're making decisions as we go forward as well. So please go to the chat and start inputting your log. And while you do that, I think we will have a little background music.
Yeah, so we invited you at this time. Listen to the music, fill out the e-log.
Fill out your logbook.
We know that we're supposed to put into our logbook all of our information. So we are inviting you to share your sentiments about what you would have learned this afternoon and what you saw this afternoon. I should say this evening, tonight.
And principals, as you share in the chat, some of what you write tonight, we are asking you to share that, because that will also inform us as we go forward with the series of the new things that we can do and bring in our sharing in the future episodes of the Principals Log. So please share.
Gary is saying, apart from his work in education, he was an avid Pan supporter and Blue Devil masked man on Juve morning. Very interesting.
Where did he find the time and the energy?
But I guess, as I said, he was way ahead of his time. So it would have fitted in with our ministry's new cultural transformation drive.
Colleagues, please write your comments. So Teresa is saying, be humble and exhibit concern for the human person.
Very important.
Yes.
And
it just makes me think, what would Bernard do?
Yes.
Mr. Mass is saying, it is important to remember in dealing with situations, we need to be approachable and human.
Wow, this one, very nice. Pindican, inspirational and motivational reflection on the impact and contribution of Dr. Bernard Tappin. The question posed what Dr. Tappin would have done in this particular situation was most thought-provoking and causes us to be reflective in our daily routine. Rennie Wibi, Ms. Ailu and Mr. Ribeiro basically covered who Dr. Tappin was as a person and as an educator. I will always remember his inspirational talk and sense of humor. Alan Telesford, good evening all. A very insightful presentation. Dr. Tappin's qualities will certainly guide my practice going forward.
Dialgo also said that our role is to display commitment to God, country, and people. This principle says that so. Gorin, this series is a fantastic idea. Thank you, Ms. Gorin, and I look forward to exploring the other sessions. Tonight we learned quite a lot about Dr. Tappin, and though I did not have the opportunity to meet him, how he lived his life is inspiring to me as a young principal. I think that the information revealed on the path apps has taken and the impact on education should be documented for future principals. Thank you so much.
So we'll just, we have the last one that we're going to read before we close.
We go.
Dr. Tappin was a kind, caring, jovial person. I remember him sharing at various training sessions at RCLRC, and that he was always concerned about what administrators did to advance the education system. He always spoke about empowerment and wanted administrators to own the fact that they had a responsibility to make our systems and schools better. He was pained when the work that he had done to digitalize the circulars and memos was unexplainably lost. I don't have to say where they were lost. We know where they were lost. He made real connections grounded in his faith and hope for mankind. And what a way to end. Certainly, we want to thank each and every one of you who took part this afternoon. Well, I keep saying this afternoon, but tonight. And
it's early for you, David.
It sure is. We hope that you will join us again when we venture into the captain's log. I will leave the last words for tonight to my co-host, Cindy.
Thank you so much, David. And we want to say thank you to all our principals and all administrators, all who joined us here this evening. Please continue to write in the captain's log over there in the chat. And we hope that you will join us again, as David said, and continue as we continue to build this log and to draw us into our community and build the crew of our Starship Enterprise as we venture into becoming more courageous, more informed, more empowered principals together. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us.
Good night, everyone. Over and out from Starship Log.